Before we get to this week's episode of Business Over a Brew, let me tell you about my friends at Roberts Motors. You know, one of our favorite episodes here on the show was when we had a chance to sit down with Sam and John Roberts. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode, go back and take a look at it. It's great to see the interaction between not only two business partners, but of course father and son as well. They really epitomize what a local business is all about. Number one, doing business the right way, giving back to the community. If you have a chance, you may not buy a car from there, but at least give them the opportunity. Shop robertsmotors.com. You get more at Roberts Motors Ford. More selection, more value. Each vehicle they sell comes with the Roberts Rewards Value Package, which includes oil changes for 2 years, loaner cars, car washes, and much more. Get more at Roberts Motors Ford. Check them out at robertsmotors.com. Now enjoy this week's episode of Business Over a Brew. Welcome to Business Over a Brew, the show where we talk business with some of the Riverbend's most interesting and influential business leaders, all while enjoying a nice brew from the Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier Hotel in Alton. In this episode, we'll talk to Alton Mayor Brant Walker. He'll tell us about his unlikely candidacy for mayor and some exciting economic developments in Alton. So let's get to it. It's the Business Over a Brew podcast from the Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier Hotel in Alton. Welcome to Business Over a Brew. Pleased to be joined in this episode by Alton Mayor Brant Walker. Mr. Mayor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Nick, oh my gosh, thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
You've been on the radio with us several times. I think the first time we've done a TV show together, so a little different. But talk to us a little bit about, I just want to start with, because it was such a really surprising kind of underdog story, the way you even became mayor as a write-in candidate.
Yeah.
Where were you when you decided, I think I'm going to run for mayor? And was there somebody that suggested that to you?
No, I think it was more of a culmination of things building over time. I'm not sure it was one big event like a fight where there's like a knockout punch. It was a lot of things that added up. And I think a majority of it was, my daughter grew up here. I had my business here for 15, 16 years. So I was in the city in multiple wards on a 6 to 7 day basis. I own property, I restore properties. So over about a 25, 26 year period that I've been in the city, I just saw this like slow decline. So it was a gradual ebbing away of, man, the parks aren't looking as good as they used to. Our infrastructure's falling apart. Our economic development doesn't seem to be where it should be. And I liken that a lot to just literally working and being in the city 7 days a week and raising my daughter here.
So you decide to run. It was the first public office you'd ran for?
Correct.
So
nothing like going for the brass ring right away, right?
Right,
Should have
exactly,
tried some library board or
you didn't run for
first.
city council first or anything like
No.
that. It was, I'm straight going for mayor. Tell us about that process a little bit. When did you start to think, there's a chance I could win this thing?
Well, the first time I wasn't sure. Of course, with the writing candidacy, I've not done this before, so I wasn't really sure how that was going to play out. I felt like it was close because I really did feel like the city was ready for something a little bit different or to try something different than what we had been doing. So I was very confident going in with the track record I had with a lot of the restoration I'd done, successfully running a business in the city that had over 300 employees right there on Brown Street. I felt like I had a pretty good shot at actually doing it. I really didn't know how to read, being thrown off the ballot for various reasons, how that may or may not play out. So I was nervous, there's no doubt.
Take us to election night. Where were you watching the returns come in?
Johnson's Corners. And we didn't have privy to internet service up there. It wasn't as good as it should have been. So we actually had people at each polling place that tore the tickets and drove them back to the back room of Johnson's Corners. And we did it like old school on a chalkboard basically and just started adding up numbers. And at the end of the night, we knew we had won the day, but we weren't sure where the mail-in or the not the write-in, but the early voting and some of the other things that can come in that aren't associated with the actual election day. So we knew it was tight.
Well, I think it's inspiring to business owners that might be watching this as just a story of really, if you put your mind to it, anything's possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely correct. I mean, if you've never tried something and you don't mind taking a shot at it, why not? Just it's definitely a challenge for sure. Something I'd never experienced before. I'm very thankful to the city of Alton for electing me and allowing me to serve. I've really enjoyed this.
So winning's one thing, but now you take office. What was maybe the biggest surprise that you encountered once you got in the seat? 'Cause I always think there's information that you think you know, and then you actually get in the role, and it's a little different maybe.
There were a couple things. One of them in particular, I knew the city was under significant financial stress, but it was even worse than I thought. So that was a big one. And the other thing that really shocked me, in 2013 when I took office, was the lack of technology. We didn't have an information technology department, which we do now. And believe it or not, our police officers were driving around with manila envelopes like email that you would still initial for. And so one of the bigger things we tackled right away was making sure that we could more effectively communicate, not only interdepartmentally, but as a city. So we've upgraded our IT. Everybody has basically the same hardware. We upgraded all our software. Now we can actually communicate amongst departments. One of our buildings wasn't even wired for computers.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about the difference between running a business with 300 employees, but if you're running it, you can kind of not do exactly whatever you want, but it's different being a business owner versus being a mayor that's got a city council and people that you have to run things by.
It's definitely not a dictatorship, that's
right,
for sure. Yeah, as you know, as you're the general manager, and you can kind of pick it and go with it if you think it makes sense. You definitely cannot do that. We've got 7 aldermen that we need to answer to, and you've got to get a consensus or a quorum amongst those aldermen to get anything done in the city. And I've been both terms even, have been very lucky to work with some tremendous aldermen and alderwomen that I do firmly believe have the city's best interests at heart. So that's been enjoyable. It hasn't been as difficult as I was thought because everybody's on the same page for the betterment of the city. The other thing that was different than running the business, I ran a company, and it was kind of the same thing. It was in the employment industry. When you get into the city, we have so many different departments, and they're so radically different. The police department is nowhere close to what the Parks Department of Recreation does. Public Works is vastly different than the fire department. The fire department's different than none of the departments. They work well together in crisis, especially our first responders, but each department is so radically different and serves such a different function. It was kind of hard changing those gears at first, going from parks to public works to policing, which includes a jail, dispatching, fire. Now we run ambulance services. Street department used to have sewer. It was quite different dealing with those departments doing such different functions.
Tell us a little bit about the business. How did it get started? Has that been always something that you wanted to do, was to run a business? Tell us a little bit about the background there.
Yeah, actually wound up in lack of better way of explaining it is I worked for several companies and had a very, very successful track record, primarily in sales and accounting, either pre-sales, post-sales, and developing business. And I had been with one company for a while that got purchased, and I lost my job. Then I went with another company that was which was out of state, the first job. The other company I worked here was local, and that owner was a franchise, was talking about selling, and I figured since I'm generating my own business and I'm pretty comfortable with my ability to develop and maintain accounts, I just went ahead and started my own business, and I ran that for about 17 years before I became elected. And then at that time, I sold the company. So I figured if I'm doing my own accounting work and most of my sales, I might as well do it for myself.
Right. What other skills did you take from being a business owner to now being the mayor of Alton?
I think the financial responsibility and actually making decisions when it comes to employment for such a long time and working with so many people at once, I think definitely helped. Working with hundreds of employees at one time on the staff augmentation side, plus doing all our permanent placements for various organizations, I think really helped me. And then the ability to run all that payroll and really have a good grip on finances, I think was a huge plus.
Well, I really personally feel that small business is the engine of any community, especially like ours, one that's on the smaller side. That it's so important to have a thriving small business community. And I think it's been good for the city and for the area to have somebody in the seat that understands that.
Yeah, and when I started the business, I started with 0 employees in a very small budget. I was very lucky, too, that I give Mr. Dualclef a lot of credit, or definitely helped me out. Owns Duke's Bakery. I went in one of his buildings when I started because I was on a shoestring budget
Right.
with a new baby, which probably wasn't the best thing to do. Start a business when you have an infant, literally, or
Well, you got
newborn.
motivation.
Yeah, there was no doubt.
You have to succeed.
Pressure was on.
Right.
And Mike Dualclef took care of me. I went on one of his buildings. I don't think he charged me rent for, I want to say either 3 or 6 months. I can't remember. So, as you know, you've been here for a while. This community is very giving. So, yeah, I definitely know what it's like to start a small business with no budget and build it from there.
Talk a little bit about the small business community or the local business community in Alton. It's really, I think there's really been kind of a sea change in the last few years. It's really thriving, and it seems like we're maybe not quite there, but we're on the cusp of really something special, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We can see it in our numbers right now in the amount of buildings that are filling up and the amount of small businesses, which I think bodes well for our future because a lot of these small businesses are run by young entrepreneurs. Young entrepreneurs have a tendency to be around for some time. So I'm very pleased with the amount of young folks that are now choosing Alton to live here, raise families here, and particularly start the business and investing back in our community. That bodes well for us, not only today as we turn this corner, which we clearly have, but well into the future. And I haven't looked at the numbers, but before even the recession of the real estate recession, small business, which is probably 100 or 150 or 50 and under businesses, generated over 80% of all the new jobs. And I would imagine, I haven't checked, but after even the recession, as it builds, I'm probably going to bet you're going to see 90+% of all of our new jobs being come from companies of 50 employees to 150 employees. So small business runs it's basically the backbone of your city. If you don't have a good, small, thriving, small business environment, your city's probably not going to do very well.
What do you see local government's role being in economic development, getting businesses to come to town, helping small business owners to succeed?
Initially, when we took over and we did an assessment, I think it's in support. And by support, I mean you've got to be open for business, you've got to be friendly to business, and you have to be willing to listen. I got the feeling, being a business owner here, sometimes that City Hall wasn't as receptive as it should be to business. So we wanted to change that climate. We want to make sure the permitting process is easy. And then most importantly, we want to focus on our infrastructure. And it doesn't matter if you live here, if you work here, if you come to play here on the weekends, look at the Eagles, go to the marina, go to one of a park event. Your infrastructure's got to be in place. Your sidewalks, your streets have got to be in place. So we started looking at an assist role, so no matter who shows up, we have our affairs in order to help you the best that we can and make sure that when you open your business that people can get to you more easily. So an assist role, particularly when it comes to infrastructure and basically ease of use when you come to City Hall to get something done.
I think it takes a while for communities, cities to change. I mean, they're and we've certainly undergone a pretty big metamorphosis as a community from basically factory town to where we're going now. And I think one question that I always ask is what is going to be that identity going forward, do you think, for the city of Alton and for the Riverbend community in general?
Oh boy, I mean, that would be hard to say because we have so many different facets of the city because we still have some of the Industrial Revolution left. The steel plants here, Arden Mills is still here. So we still have some of that. We have a very changing environment, just let's say on the Broadway corridor where Mr. Simmons is putting a lot of his money, which is going to be, I don't know, cool stuff. The things that make your community much more different than any other community that you'll find, which comes through your small business. Then if you go to the Beltline, we have our stores that you will find anywhere in the country. And then if you'll look even farther than that, we have a thriving, which I think is incredible, medical field. I think if you're seeing a lot of our growth in livable wage jobs particularly, I think our medical field with what St. Anthony's has done with their cancer campus and a lot of things that Alton Memorial is doing right now with regards to bringing some Siteman care over here and expanding some of their products that they offer is going to build tremendously well for us going into the future. And you're starting to see that with the hospitals, those other ancillary things that come along with support for the hospitals.
One thing we see communities do, and I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer to this, but you bring in a big box store like a Walmart, let's say, and there are pros and cons to that, of that being good for your community, but sometimes at the expense of the local business owner. How do you balance that?
Honestly, as a city, I don't know unless it's a city-owned property that comes through Plan Commission, that's through the city's decision. But I don't think the city should be in the position of picking winners and losers. I think market forces
Right.
dictate that. And I'll go back to, I think it's the city's job to make sure we inspect, that the permitting process is easy. If you need help with our various economic tools, either TIF, enterprise zones, facade grants, that we make that available to you, but not necessarily dictate what the market will and will not support.
So it's basically, I agree. It's it's the free market will
Correct.
take care of it. If you can't discriminate against even the Walmarts of the world that want to come to town, if it's a good deal for the city or the community that you're in, then you kind of have to step out of the way and let that happen.
Yeah. Now
and then the business owners have to adjust to that.
Yeah. Now, me personally, I buy local, shop local,
Sure.
because those are the ones. If you really look at it, and I forgot where I saw the sign. I don't know if it was on. I can't remember where I saw it, but local businesses support your kids' ball team. Local businesses, when we redid the park, small businesses put in that park because they're here. So I firmly believe, support your small business, stay off the internet, get out and say hi to your neighbors, and basically take care of those that take care. And that's going to be primarily your small business owners.
Well, you mentioned Mr. Simmons and his project. Talk a little bit about some of the other economic developments going on in town. I know there's a lot happening right now.
And the thing that's so exciting is we can talk. This isn't what's about to happen with Mr. Simmons' project or what's happened in the past. This is what's going to go on right now, in addition to what we're going to be announcing on or before the first of the year. And I'm going to give you a little tease. It's incredibly exciting. So it's been a very good week at City Hall, and that's a big tease.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Very shortly, stay tuned. Right now, we have the $500,000 Great Streets Planning Initiative for downtown, which is well underway, which was very good for us. That's the first time East-West Gateway has awarded a grant of that size to the Illinois side, and we're the first city to get that. We have continued renovations at Alton Square Mall. Stay tuned for a lot more developments and announcements there. As you know, we had the Smoothie King just open here, which was great. And then when you mentioned the Beltline, we're kind of a tertiary market and a secondary market, which is St. Louis. However, we have regional sales leaders that for national chains like Lowe's, Red Lobster, Farm and Home, K Jewelers, Target, Kohl's. These are all, every one of those stores I mentioned are ranked in the top 5 in the St. Louis region, not only in the Riverbend area, but the entire St. Louis metropolitan region, up to the point where Kohl's, I did a retention visit there, Kohl's got an award as being the number 4 store in the nation per square foot sales.
Wow.
So most of these stores are ranked in the 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and not outside the 5. So we have an incredibly healthy retail sector in our community. We're very fortunate. We have the $1.8 million Broadway street improvements are near completion. So hopefully next summer you'll be able to go down Broadway without a flood and without detour signs. But then we're going right up to Broadway and College Avenue. So we're going to switch from there to a big project up there.
I know I personally was glad that Broadway at State Street is now back open.
It's done,
for
but
lanes,
which goes back to a part of what we talked about. Infrastructure is
Sure.
big, and we have another project of that size, if not bigger, going on Washington and College next year, and another part of State Street, which will go all the way from the Godfrey line all the way past Hit and Run. So we have a lot more infrastructure coming that way, as well as park improvements. We touched a little bit on the Alton's work, land acquisitions for proposed development. I can now announce that Planet Fitness will be opened sooner than later, and there's a lot more planned improvements at that Central Plaza up there. So, and that's a multi-million-dollar investment when Planet Fitness comes in, and that's just to name a few. And that doesn't include, like we mentioned, what Alton Memorial's done this year, the $14 or $16 million work that St. Anthony's had just done, and some of the other things that have happened this year.
I want to
And then the port. I forgot we got the American cruise lines come in this year, which is terrific
Right.
for us to be a actual legitimate port of destination, which is incredible. We've been working on that for almost 6 years.
You were instrumental in a big, had a big role in the small business revolution coming to Alton, and I know that was. Tell us a little bit about that, and because you were on camera a lot for that.
And I guess it goes back to what you said before, but how exciting is it to see small business get a national platform. And this, I'm going to put my small business owner hat back on, because I did that primarily the bulk of my professional life. It is so nice to see the folks, because most of your big announcements that make the news are all your bigger corporations, your bigger plants, if we get those. Very, very rarely do the guys that get up 7 days a week with no budget, or guys and gals, no budget, life's dream, life's work, smaller companies, few employees, get that kind of spotlight. I was so excited, one, for the city to get that type of press and PR, but more excited for those small businesses that go at it every day to get that kind of recognition, because that never happens for small business.
It doesn't. And I think one question I have is, how do you and can you replicate that spirit that brought the show to town? That it was a magical time to be around. Because of everybody was together, everybody was on the same team, pulling the rope.
Nobody was complaining.
No,
the naysayers were gone. Everybody pulled together for a common cause and a common goal. And honestly, we pulled it off. And I can't remember, there was a city outside of, I want to say Austin, and maybe it was Bastrop. I could be wrong. Bastrop, Texas, and I may have that wrong.
Sounds familiar. I don't know if that was one from another season or that, but yeah.
But there was a city in proximity to, I want to say Austin, which was 9 million in population, and our proximity to St. Louis, which is 3 million. I'm like, we made the Final Five, but man, they've got 3 times the population we had, and I'd be doggone if we didn't pull it off. The whole community came together, which pulled in the whole St. Louis metropolitan area, and that was a big upset, because we sat next to another community that was 3 times the size of the St. Louis market, and we won. It was incredible. And then after that shoe dropped, then came the AARP Top 10 ranking for the number 1 place to retire in the country, followed by Forbes magazine as the number 1 city in the state of Illinois to retire to, followed by the Travel Channel picking this as one of the top 50 most charming small cities in the country, followed by the Travel Channel reshooting Ghost Adventurers, not only reshooting an entire scene, but opened the season with Alton, two weekend nights.
Right.
So that was all one year for the city. That was unbelievable.
I'll ask you to put your business owner, community member hat on, because I don't think this is the role of government or the mayor, but are there things we could be doing more or better to capitalize on things like that?
We're actually, I hope as a city we're trying to. We're actually working with Godfrey right now on a joint economic development venture where we're actually getting the cities to become more proactive, which will be phase 2. 1, make sure that we're ready when you show up, make sure it's easy for you to use the city, and we're here to help you get started. But 2, why aren't we reaching out more? I noticed that coming in, we don't have a reach out. We just actually went in with Godfrey together on a plan for more proactive retail development, working with Godfrey. So I think on the city standpoint, we need to leverage this and start reaching out, because it's a heck of a story. And we know it pretty well, but who else knows that we have these rankings nationally? Who else knows we have Forbes magazine ranked us, AARP, Travel Channel, Small Business Revolution, powered by Deluxe. And that's a message that we need to get out of there, because businesses are investing, businesses are opening up, and we darn sure better make sure that we're at least in the hunt when they start looking. And I think on the city side, we could do a better job at that, and we're starting to become proactive right now. And we separated building and zoning and code enforcement away from economic development and zoning, which used to all be one department. So code enforcement's one, economic development's its own, and we're going to start becoming a lot more proactive.
I think that's a good place to end it. I think it's an exciting time to be doing business in Alton, and we're certainly happy to be part of that, and appreciate all you do. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Nick, thank you, and I owe you a huge apology. I probably owe Nick a free brew. I'm an hour late. I had forgotten my apologies.
We kept ourselves busy.
So. Yeah, I see. Thank you. I appreciate coming here, and like I said, we tease that there's a lot more coming in the future, in the very near future.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Business Over a Brew podcast. For more video of me drinking free beer with some of the Riverbend's most interesting and influential business leaders, visit AltonDailyNews.com and click on the podcast page. To enjoy a great meal with great food, great service, and great atmosphere, visit Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier in Alton. Check out some of their new menu items at GreatRiversTapandGrill.com.